If you're watching this as a free subscriber to this Substack, you're going to want to click the link underneath to watch the full video. Don't sign up for the Substack, but instead sign up for Pelican Plus. We're migrating everything over there. You can find my work, you can find the work of others. You can find prayers, recitations of the rosary, even the audio gospels for your listening pleasure. So click the link underneath and sign up for Pelican Plus, where you'll find not only my stuff, but the stuff from many other wonderful traditional Catholic creators. And the platform is filling out and being built up more and more every day. And if you're already a paid subscriber, please check your emails for information on how to switch over. Don't worry, you're not going to lose anything, and you'll have access to everything and more than you're used to. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I don't really care what Pope Leo says or does. Is that bad? Now, I'll explain what I mean. It's not because I don't think that the Pope is not worth listening to. Of course I don't think that. But I mean, this whole 24-hour news cycle, this whole papal circus that's been going on, especially since the reign of Pope Francis, it doesn't really interest me in one bit, and I don't really pay attention to it. I'm going to explain what I mean. Stay tuned. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a story here. In about 2013, I guess, I started teaching. And in short order, I became a high school teacher. And I was a Catholic high school teacher. And I even taught religion. I've told you this before. If you've watched my stuff, you know that. But for those of you who don't know, yeah, that's what I did. In any event, I taught in a Catholic high school system here in the province of Ontario that was really, really bad. And in some ways, I think it's worse than the public system. Public system's bad. But the Catholic system has, at this point, all the bad stuff of the public system, all the woke stuff. But it also has woke, heretical, liberal Catholicism. Now, I wasn't a traditionalist when I started teaching. I was trying to be a faithful Catholic. I was probably what you'd consider something like a quote-unquote JP2 conservative, meaning, you know, I didn't really think about the liturgy too much, but I was very strong in the pro-life stance. I wanted to evangelize, all those kinds of things. I thought Catholic Answers was basically the magisterium of the church. This isn't to criticize Catholic Answers, but I'm just giving a picture of that sort of archetypal type of Catholic that I was that. And then I discovered Catholic tradition about 3 years into my teaching, and that's another story for another day. But while I was teaching, I was always coming up against heresy. I mean, I remember one document that came out. Doesn't matter what it is, but it was a document that we were supposed to implement in our classrooms, and we had a meeting about it. And I'm sitting there reading this document, and it was so unbelievably bad. And it wasn't just bad in the sense like, okay, this is liberal stuff, but it was academically fraudulent bad. There were citations from popes that were not even exact. And I knew that because I'm a super nerd who reads all these encyclicals and stuff, and they were trying to cherry pick from things. And it was things like, if you've ever written an academic paper where if you're going to quote someone and you're putting two quotes together from the same paragraph, you have to put a ... in the middle to show that that's not the actual quote, but it's like a combined quotation. And there's a level of honesty that's supposed to be there. Well, this was combining different sentences. I think it was from Pope John Paul II to try to prove some point that, in fairness, John Paul II wasn't making. And they left out the middle sentence and didn't put any ... And I found all these errors in this thing. I said, what are you guys doing? And I even brought it to the chaplaincy lead who worked for the diocese or whatever. And I said, listen, all this stuff that they're trying to get us to teach our students, this is condemned by like all these popes. It's in the syllabus of errors. It's here, it's there. And you know what I was told? I was told, oh, Kennedy, you're creating a real big headache for me. That was a very watershed moment for me because I had been fighting for years. I had been bringing things up to the principal. I'd been bringing things up to my parish priest. I'd been bringing things up to my colleagues. And it was just roadblock after roadblock, even animosity, conflict, you know, ruining relationships because I was just this crazy Catholic who wouldn't, you know, stop being such a crazy right-winger or whatever the accusations were. It got to the point where my colleagues were even putting anonymous things in my mailbox in the staff room, which were offensive. Like, it was bad. And it was because I was defending the teaching of the church in my religion classroom at a Catholic school. And at a certain point, my wife was talking with our former parish priest, Father David Sherry, who is now the district superior of the Society of St. Pius X in the UK and Ireland. I believe also Scandinavia is under his bailiwick. But he had a meeting with my wife. My wife was explaining all the things I was going through. And he said to her, he said, you know what? Kennedy's just going to have to leave that system at some point. And he was right. That came pretty quickly because within about 10 months of that, the COVID lockdown started and I changed careers. But the whole time I was in the system, I was doing my very best to try to point out all the problems and try to change it from within. And Father Sherry told my wife, basically said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's not going to change the system from within because it's a Leviathan. There's too much momentum. There's too much weight. There's too much inertia. And what's going to happen to me, according to Father Sherry, again, I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically either Kennedy's spirit is going to be broken or he's going to submit and become what he hates. Or he is going to get pushed to the point of doing something he wouldn't otherwise do and having to leave for unceremonious reasons. So he was right. And when I left the system, I kind of got clarity on it. And as time passed, the emotions and whatnot subsided. Whenever you kind of have separation from something, you can think about it a little bit more clearly. I think Chesterton said one of the biggest problems with the critics of Catholicism in the modern world, he was writing this in the 20s and 30s, was that they were neither in the church nor outside the church. They were kind of on the doorstep. They were basically lapsed Catholics who didn't really know what they didn't know. And he used the analogy of, if you're inside, you can see the beauty of the cathedral and the stained glass and the light coming through and stuff, and you see it for what it is. And if you're outside of it, you can look at it and see the beauty for what it is. But if you're standing in the doorway, you look up and you just see like the ceiling of a doorway. You don't really know what you're looking at, So being outside of something gives you a type of clarity from a different perspective. When I was inside, I had the clarity of that experience. And when I was outside of the system and I could look at it from afar and not see it with all the stimulus and things going on in my daily life as a teacher in that system, I could see it differently. Anyway, as I gained perspective, I realized that not that all of that fighting and all of those efforts were futile. Obviously, it came from a good place. I'm sure that many of my students, and I know this, many of my students who I've talked to over the years and stuff, it left an impression on them. They practiced the faith because of stuff we talked about in the class. I'm not saying it was me who did it. The Holy Ghost converts people, but he uses human instruments, even dumb ones like me sometimes. He uses a donkey prophesied in the Old Testament, so at least maybe I can do something. And and all those things were great. The coaching was great. The experience I had with the students, I love the actual classroom stuff. When I look back at all those fights I had, trying to defend and trying to get the school to adopt, Orthodox Catholicism, all these things. When I was outside of it looking at this Leviathan, I realized to myself, this thing just needs to be burned down. It's just gone. It's a house that's got termites to the point where it's miraculous it's even still standing, and it needs to fall. And whatever. Now, with the reason I'm telling this story is because when I first found traditional Catholicism, and I'm sure this is an experience so many of you have had, there should be like a, how there's RCIA, or they call it OCIA now. I know it's often done poorly, but when you're being initiated into the church, there's supposed to be some sort of, formula. They're catechizing you to become a Catholic. There's like a how-to, what to expect. There needs to be some sort of like course or pamphlet or something for people who find tradition. And it's like, okay, here's all the things that you're going to discover in the first 18 months. You're going to get real into Fatima. You're going to get real into figuring out if Bonini was a Mason. You are going to get real ticked off about Assisi and the Pachamama controversy in the Vatican. You're going to go through this whirlwind with Archbishop Lefebvre, and your friends are going to start yelling at you and calling you schismatic, and you're going to be like, what's up with that? And they're going to read his biography, and then you're going to go, oh my goodness, he's a saint. What do I do now? And there's like all these things you go through. There needs to be some sort of like roadmap. This is how you survive tradition. And then there needs to be some advice in there saying, okay, once you get through that whirlwind where it's like drinking from a fire hose, at a certain point, you just have to block out the noise and just try to be a faithful Catholic, because as important as Fatima is, and Fatima is very important, as important as it is to understand the liturgical revolution, it's very important. As important as it is to understand all the novelties and ambiguities in Vatican II, you're not going to be quizzed on that when you stand in front of your judge. You're going to be let into heaven if you're worthy of being there by God's grace, and you're not going to be let in if you mess up too hard, no matter how much you know about this or that piece of history, etc. And then you just got to be a Catholic. It's so hard to just be a traditional Catholic today because, especially on YouTube, and this is why we've made this platform, is because there's so much good out there on places like YouTube and social media. Yeah, there's lots of good, and there's so much noise. And it just sucks you back in. You're trying to have a prayer life, and you're trying to not be upset about something going on in the church, but then some video comes across your desk, and it's like, the heretics are trying to take your mass, and this is why they worship Satan. And you're like, I should probably click that, because if that's true, that's a big deal. Then you click it, and you go, this is no new information than I had yesterday. And now I'm worried about heretics worshiping Satan and trying to take my mass, and I forgot to say my morning prayers. It's an experience that I think so many of us have. And at a certain point, I'll be honest with you, for me, discovering the Society of St. Pius X, finding the chapel, finding the priory, finding the community, making the friends, it was one of the most important things that we've ever done in our lives, my wife and I, especially for our family. Because, and I know it's not the case for everybody, and I know that there isn't a permanent traditional situation for everyone, so I sympathize. I'm not trying to gloat or something like that. But in our situation, there was so much peace of mind knowing whatever those idiots are doing in the Curia, whatever these crazy people are doing in these bishops' conferences, whatever nonsense they're writing in encyclicals or whatever, the Mass of all time will be at this place on Sundays at 9 a.m., and we're just going to go live our Catholic life, and we're going to let the circus employees handle the circus, because I don't want to be a part of that. And when I made that realization, honestly, it was probably around 2021 where I started really switching gears. And by about 2022, I had made a conscious decision that I needed to change the path that I was on. When I first started YouTube, let's be honest, in those days of the COVID time, when everybody was on their screens more than they are now because everybody was at home working or whatever, and there was so much going on, I remember doing videos for the Fatima Center at the time, and if I did a video with the word Freemason and lockdown and Pope Francis and Fatima or something in the title, it would get like 100,000 views if I just stared at the camera and said 5 words. It was crazy. It was artificial, though. It was an artificial success because of the time we were in. It didn't last. And then when I went off on my own, I was like, okay, I should probably continue this path. Not because I was doing it for the clicks, but because I thought, okay, I want to try to help people, and I want to express what I'm thinking, and this is what people are into, and I think I can offer something to say, and maybe that's good. I hope it is. But after a really short amount of time, like within the first year of me doing my own YouTube channel, which I started in 2022, I just stopped caring about what Pope Francis was saying. I just stopped caring about the crisis in the church in the political sense. And I remember there was a watershed moment for me. It was when Pope Francis, or the Vatican, whoever it was, under Pope Francis. They laicized Father, or no longer Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. Now, Father Frank Pavone is not a traditionalist, and he's got a lot of very modernist, very liberal things that he's said. But I remember at the time, it was like, this is such an injustice. We need to defend Father Pavone. This is just continual whatever. And I made a video that I never published. I did it vlog style. I was out in the snowy field somewhere. I was actually having my car worked on in town, and I had like 2 hours. So I brought my camera stick and whatever with me, and I found a quiet place to go try to repurpose my time and do some work. And I made a video, and I went into a Tim Hortons, which is a coffee shop here in Canada. They have them in Michigan and New York as well, if you're not aware. It's everywhere here. And they have free Wi-Fi and all that. So I went in, I got a coffee and a donut or something, and I sat down to edit this video on my laptop. And I started watching the video, and I hated looking at myself. Not that I love to look at myself in some narcissistic way, but what I mean is I looked at what I was saying, and I just immediately, like, it was like a voice in my head, and it was like, why are you so angry at this? Now, I can't stand it. I can't stand it because I've heard this a billion times, and I'm sure you have as well. I can't stand it when people who have problems with Catholic traditionalism accuse traditionalists of being angry all the time. I think it's a completely unfair assessment because I have social media and everybody is angry all the time. If what we mean is they express their opinions about X, Y, and Z and they're angry. It's not a trad thing. It's just a human thing. But at that moment, I looked at myself and I thought, you're angry about this priest being laicized, and you're expressing the injustice of this, but really you're just kind of screaming into the void. That was the feeling I had. I don't know. I can't explain it. And I deleted the video. I never published it. And then I started making conscious decisions about how I was going to change. And that's why I started my Substack, and that's why I moved here to Pelican. Or if you're watching this on Substack, it'll be migrated over. You'll be migrated over. Anyway, I've talked about this. And I realized that I had to go beyond the politics of the church. I had to go beyond, like, what motu proprio is going to come out tomorrow talking about the Latin Mass, because the infection is so deep that I sort of felt that there would be something cathartic about understanding that sickness, because then it's kind of like, you know, if you're dealing with health problems or something, or a loved one is, and there's all this unknown, and you're getting these differing opinions from doctors, and people are telling you this, and people are telling you that, and then you kind of finally get the tests done, and you really realize what the problem is. And once you get that diagnosis, now you have some clarity. And it may be fatal, but you know that. And it might be curable, and you know that. And then you can start to act accordingly. If it's fatal, well, you prepare for your death. And this is something we understand as Catholics. That's a great mercy. You know, we always pray in the Hail Mary, pray for us now and at the hour of our death. If you could know the hour of your death, I mean, that would be a great mercy. Not that you should be sinning or something until then or something, but it's always good to have a clear exit point so you know where the off-ramp is and when to turn so you don't miss it, you know? Whereas if you go, okay, you can beat this. You know, this is a cancer we can treat, or this is a cholesterol thing or a heart thing, and we've just got to lose some weight or whatever. And it's like, okay, great. Now I know what to do. And now you're not in this realm of the anxiety of living in this sickness but not knowing what the problem is. It's kind of like that in the church. When I really dug deep into modernism, it was really cathartic because I came out the other side and I went, all right, this illness is fatal. So I know what it is, and I know how contagious it is. And I can't expect anybody who has that illness to do the right thing. I can't expect the post-conciliar popes as it stands to do the right thing. I can't expect the bishops and the priests, even many of them who say the traditional mass, especially in diocesan settings where, yeah, they love the aesthetics, but they went to a terrible seminary. So you see these crazy letters coming out, like this recent one in Knoxville, Tennessee. Yes, he's a priest who says the TLM, but his letter is so modernist, it's crazy. You no longer have to get so worked up about what happens from the Pope or from anyone who is in this vat of this disease, because you understand, you say, okay, that's how a modernist would talk. And even if you get bad news, even if you get distressing news, as long as you can understand why it is the way it is, it does give you a little peace, at least for me. And that was one of the hardest things during the COVID period, is it was so much kind of chaos and mixed messaging and confusion. And it was all very sudden, and it was hard to really know why on earth were they saying what they were saying. That unknown is what gives you that anxiety. Whereas I hope something like COVID doesn't happen again. Some people say it will. I don't know. But I would like to think if something like that happened again, I would react differently, because now I know. Now I spent all that time as a journalist writing about all these doctors and talking to these doctors and stuff and whatever. And okay, before the COVID period, I didn't really know much about the medical profession. During the COVID period, I learned a lot about the medical profession. After the COVID period, I've had a lot of time to reflect on why doctors are the way they are. Generally speaking, there's many good doctors, and if you are a good doctor listening, I'm not talking about you, but I have a friend who moved to the States, but he's an English doctor, and he's traditional Catholic, and we were talking a lot during the COVID period because he knew that it was all silly, and he was basically explaining to me, he's like, Kennedy, you have to understand, these doctors are inundated with so much information from the day they enter medical school that their sort of survival mechanism is rote memory, learn everything you need to know so that you can basically see the signs that you're told to see so you can prescribe the thing you're supposed to prescribe. And that's how general medicine works. And he said, because he was a traditional Catholic and he was doing so much other reading on the side, like he was forming himself as a traditional Catholic, he got this other experience where he was learning how to think and he was reading philosophy and all these kinds of things, the grace of the sacraments, of course. So he was like an odd duck in the profession. And he realized at a certain point, he's like, there's just nothing I can say to my colleagues. Like, it was almost like if I tried to present them with something that wasn't from one of the regular journals they're used to, it was almost like it hurt their brain and was offensive that they would even have to try to switch their focus to that. And he said it wasn't that these people were heartless. Some of them were. I mean, there's heartless people everywhere. But he said it really was just, they're just like true blue believers that everything that comes out of some medical journal that is used in their formation and everything, like this thing can't lie to you. And their survival mechanism their whole time through law or medical school and residency and stuff has been stick to the script, because that's how you get ahead and that's how lives are saved. And that's the narrative. And it's generally true. I mean, lots of doctors do great things, but when something like COVID comes up, it causes a lot of anxiety because now we got to think differently, but they can't. All of this long-winded rant is to say, at a certain point, I hope everyone watching this, we get to this point where we go beyond being shocked or offended by what's happening with these crazy bishops and with the Pope, and even Pope Leo. I'm sure he's going to disappoint us in many ways, although I do have hope he'll do some good things. Because you have to understand, you're dealing with modernists. And they think like modernists, and they write like modernists, and they talk like modernists. And once you understand that, you go, okay, I'm not expecting anything from these men. So I find my little place where I can be Catholic, and I worry about saving my soul and my family's soul. That's all I can do. In my lay sphere, I can do my best, which is what we do here at Pelican. We can do our best to try to communicate things that are important. And that is powerful. It's gained a lot of momentum. Not just Pelican, but in recent years, the Taylor Marshalls of the world, these people speaking truth that isn't popular and you're not going to hear in your parish, it is having an effect, and that's good. But there's a limit to it. We can't change policy in the church. We can't fix Pope Leo's formation. He went to the seminary in the 70s and 80s. He's going to be a priest formed in the 70s and 80s. And any goodness that comes out of his pontificate that is non-modernist will be either from instinct or from a legitimate pursuit of holiness, and he'll learn things in the spiritual life, and that's great. Or maybe he'll just do some reading on the side, or has done, and everyone can change. But it's not something I'm going to get worked up about. I don't even really want to read his recent encyclical. I read a little bit, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going to find some stuff in there that's crazy. I know I am. I'm going to find some stuff that sounds good. Okay. I'm going to find some stuff where I go, I don't even know what that means, because nobody knows what that means, because what is that? And that's the way it's been since Paul VI and John Paul II. You read John Paul II's encyclicals, you go, that's a pretty nice statement. That sounds pretty Catholic. It's pretty powerful, pretty smart. That statement sounds really modernist. That statement, no one knows what it means. I don't even think he knows what it means when he wrote it. Because that's what happens with modernism. I don't know. That's all I got for you. God bless you all, and I'll talk to you soon. And make sure you sign up for Pelican if you haven't. If you're watching this on Substack as a paid member, you're at the end. Check your email. The voucher is there to honor your subscription dollars that you've paid for Substack. Seamless migration, bada boom, bada bing, you're over. Everyone's happy. You don't just have to listen to me anymore. I can get annoying. You get everybody else. We've brought on some new people. That'll be announced soon. We've got some new things coming down the pike. It's very exciting. So I can't wait for you to see that. All right. God bless you all. Bye-bye.